Morning, learning as Chosra for Shleima Filan Chaya Basarach. We are in Daf Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph. I'm sure everyone can hear the relief and the calmness in my voice that I feel like we're within a blot of being caught up. So let's try to get through a blot today so we don't fall behind again. So in the middle of the Amud on Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph. Arba Snifin Shel Zov HaYisham. We said um, that there were four supports made out of metal around the shulchan. And they had 28 konim that were supported by little protrusions on the snifin between the chalas. Where does this come from? Amar Katina, Amar Kro, Vasisa, Karoisa, Vakapoisa, Vakashoisa, Makiyoisa. So the Gemara is going to touch this pasuk. Karoisav elu dufusim. Karoisav are the forms that we used for the challah. So we said there's three forms for each challah, but one for when you form it at the beginning, one for baking, and one after it was baked. Kapoisav elu bazichin. Those were the bazichin, the little spoons that they would put the lavaina in. Kashoisav elu snifin. Kashoisav is the supports around the shulchan. Menachos elu konim. Menachos are the half tubes that were put between the chalas. And if the pasuk concludes, Asher Yusuch bahen, that was covered in it, Shemisacha bahen es alechem, that these konim would cover the lechem, so to speak. You place them in between one lechem and the other, so they were on top of each one of the lechems, of the loaves. Moisav Rava. So Rava asked the following question: Loisir Sidur HaKonim, neither placing these tubes that held up the chalas, the loy netilasen, nor does the removal of those konim doichetz the Shabbos. They don't now the Shabbos. Visak the daitach deraisa. It comes from a pasuk. The Torah says you have to have these tubes, and they're supposed to be covering the chalas. Amayin doichetz the Shabbos. Why would it not be doichetz Shabbos? It's part of the avodah. The avodah of the chalas is doichetz Shabbos. Why should this part be different? Had Amar Rava, so Rava said, Lav milsi dami. So this is not a good time that I said. It's not. Klal Amar Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said a rule. Kol malach she'efsalul asoysav erev Shabbos ein doichetz Shabbos. Any malacha that it could be that this could be done from erev Shabbos is not doichetz Shabbos. So haninami efshalei dachi. And this also, it's possible to do it before Shabbos and it will be v'loi dachi Shabbos. Like time alai, what's the reason? This sounds like Rav Shimon that with darshan tam and the Dekra, right? Because Gemara doesn't say this, but we're now delving into the pasuk. Told you that you have to have the konim, and we're saying the reason for the konim is that it shouldn't get ruined. That you should have air circulation between the chalas. Time but miyafish. For that amount of time, as we're going to see in the brisa, that we're going to say that it doesn't get ruined with a half a day, right? From the beginning of Shabbos till you put on, you have the old chalas from the previous week. Then the second half of the day, the rest of Shabbos, you have the new chalas. So each one is only a half a day being piled on top of each other without konim. That's not going to spoil the chalas. Kedetanya, ketzad. How do they do the avodah of the shulchan? Nichnas me'erev Shabbos. It came on erev Shabbos. Shamton. They would remove the konim. Or minichin la'arche shulchan. They would place it underneath the shulchan, facing in the same direction. Moitzer Shabbos nichnas. And after Moitzer Shabbos, they would put it in Magbiya Rosheh Shachalo Machnes Kono. Tachteh, they would pick up one chal and stick these tubes underneath it. B'chayzer Magbiya Rosh Shachalo. They would take another challah, umachnis kana tachteh. They take the half tube and put it underneath it. So that is the explanation of why the konim were not placed on Shabbos, because it was possible to do it on Erev Shabbos and after Shabbos without ruining the purpose of the Kohen. Sagt er, Arba Chalas Tzricha Shloisha Shloisha. Um, Arba Chalas Tzricha Shloisha Shloisha Konim. Now we're answering. We said there were 28 konim, 14 for each seder. There was six challahs piled one on top of each other. So we remarked in the Mishnah, it's a strange number, 14. It can't be divided evenly among six and even among five because you understand the top one doesn't need anything on top of it. So how do you get to 14? So we say four challahs need three konim, three full konim underneath them. The top one only needs two underneath it. Since there's nothing on top of it, it's not being pressed down so much. Two konim are enough to keep it off of the one underneath it. And the bottom one doesn't need at all. It was on the metal covered, the gold covered wooden shulchan. That was not going to, it wasn't on top of another warm loaf, so therefore it wasn't susceptible to becoming ruined from contact with the challah from underneath. Okay, now we are getting to what I had warned Lucy about. We're going to be talking about the mizbeach and its dimensions. So again, I'm just going to have a little hakdama for this. The mizbeach had essentially three indentations. So let's start from the outside. The mizbeach was 32 amos wide by 32 amos wide. The mizbeach had an indentation of 1 amma on the bottom that was called the soiviv. It was like a little ledge on the bottom of the mizbeach, all the way around. Then 6 amos from the floor, 5 amos from the side, and 4 amos from the top of the mizbeach. The mizbeach itself was 10 amos high, so 4 amos from the top and 6 amos from the bottom was the soiviv. That was the bottom was the yesod. The middle ledge that the kehanim would go around to do the avodah of the oilas oif that was shprit, that was smeared on the side of the mizbeach. That was 4 amos from the top and 6 amos from the bottom. Now, the surface of the mizbeach was really only 3 amos higher than the soiviv, but the surface of the mizbeach also contained a keren on each corner, and those kronos were 1 amma by 1 amma, so they represented both an extra height of an amma to get to 10 amas, as well as another indentation, or within the keren was another amma toward the center of the mizbeach. That's the hakdama. We'll review this again as it's discussed. So this is all relatively easy. Of course, the Gemara makes it hard so that us Jews can become smart. And we're going to be talking about different sized amas. Amas of different, they're going to be 3 or really 4 different size amas. There are only 3 that are really relevant. Actually, only 2 that are relevant over here. Even though there are 3 different sizes, we're going to be just talking about a standard amma is 5 tvachim, and then there is what we call an amma beinanis, which is an amma of 6 tvachim. Then at the end of the Gemara, we're going to discuss about a couple of ammas that were larger than the amma beinanis, but that's not relevant to our discussion at all right now. So we'll get to those later. Okay. Tanan Hasan. And this is all, we're getting to all this because we had a machlekes in the Mishnah, if you remember, about the size of the shulchan. We said the shulchan was either 5 by 10 tvachim or 6 by 12 tvachim. And that's going to be dependent on what kind of amma you used. Did you use the amma of 5? The shulchan was an amma wide and an amma long, 2 ammas long. Depends on if the amas used for the shulchan were 5 tvachim or 6 tvachim. That's how you get that machlekes. So Tanan Hasan, this machlekes about the size of the amma used for the shulchan comes from this Mishnah. Remeir Omer, Mishnah in Caleb. Kol Amos Shahayu b'Mikdash Beinin. All the Amos used in the Mikdash were the 6 tefach Amos. Like we said, there was a 5 amma that was smaller, and there were a couple that were a tiny bit bigger than the 6 amma, the 6 tefach amma. So that was called the Beinis, even though it was not the standard. The standard really was the 5 tefach. So he says they were all the amas that in the mikdash were the 6 tefach size, chutz mizbeach hazav, except the mizbeach hazav. Now we'll keep in mind that mizbeach hazav was a klisharis. So that was the only klisharis that was 6 tvachim. The rest of them. That was the only klisharis that was 5 tvachim. The rest of them were beinanis, like he said. Everything else was beinanis. Keren, the kronos, we mentioned those protuberances on the corners of the top of the mizbeach. Vasoiviv, which was the sort of catwalk going around part way up the side of the mizbeach. Vayisayid, and the foundation on the bottom of the mizbeach, the amma sticking out on the bottom of the mizbeach. So he says, according to him, but everything else, these things were all 5 tvachim, but everything else was 6 tvachim, which would include the shulchan. The shulchan was therefore 12. Was therefore 12 tvachim by 6 tvachim. Yehud Aimer, Amas binyan shisha tvachim. The Amos used in the Beis Hamikdash, the actual binyan of the Beis Hamikdash, were all 6 tvachim, which I don't think Rameir disagrees, because he said everything was beinus, including the Amos and them. V'shel kelim, but all the kelim were, which in the Amos binyan includes the mizbeach hachitzon, which was a structure. It wasn't a klisharis. V'shel kelim chamishim. He says all the kelim were chamishim. So he's disagreeing with Rameir. Rameir had said that only the mizbeach hazav was 5 tfachim, but all the other kelim was 6. Rabbi Yehuda is saying no, all the kelim were 5, including the shulchan. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda would say that the shulchan was 5 tfachim wide by 10 tfachim long. Okay. Rav Yechon, Ushnei Mikra Echad Darsha. They come both to darsh from the same pasuk. The Eila Midas. This is a pasuk in Yecheskel, right? This is all part of that vision, Chazon Yecheskel. The vision of Yecheskel is being shown the Beis Hamikdash. So the Eila Midas HaMizbeach Ba'amos. This is the midah. These are the measurements of the mizbeach in amos. Amma v'toifach. Each amma was an amma plus a tefach, meaning an amma of 5 ammas plus an additional tefach. And for some reason we said an amma over here is really 5 ammas plus 1, but he's describing the size of the amma. So he says he was shown the midas of mizbeach in 6 tefach increments. However, the amma itself was used 6 tefach ammas. The chika amma, which Rashi says, ha'amma is a reference. I'm sorry, the standard. I misstated, I think, in the beginning. I said that the standard amma, I think, is 6. The standard amma is 5. I don't know why I said that. Just got confused. So v'chik ha'ama, Rashi says, Kleimer be'elu amas ani emishu b'nois chamash. The following ones I'm going to describe as being 5, because ha'ama v'chik ha'ama the hainu yisoid the oila ama v'kanas achaz zeu yisoid konversh b'nei b'hai amas kamer the knis. But the point is ha'ama is the standard amma of 5 tfachim. So v'chik ha'ama, I did say at the beginning that 5 ammas is a tefach.
Yeah, you did. Standard is 5 and the beinin is 6.
Right. So v'chik ha'ama when we say ha'ama, the amma, that's the standard amma. So the chik, which is the yisoid, that is measured with a amma of of the standard Amma. We said at the beginning of the pasuk said that the mizbeach is measured in 6 tefach amas, and now we're going to say what the exceptions are. The exceptions are that the base is measured as 5 tefach amas, the standard amma, and Rashi notes that we're going to soon see whether we're talking about, not so soon, but the Gemara is going to explain whether we're talking about the height of the yisoid or the width of the yisoid. Ba'ama roichev, and then the amma of the ammas of the roichev is also a 5 tefach amma. The Gemara is going to say what the roichev is. The roichev is going to be the seiviv. Ugvula al svasa, and from its border to its edge, saviv zeres ha'echa. It's going to be one zeres. A zeres is a half amma of a 5 tefach amma. Zegav hamizbech. That's the top that's the top of the mizbech. So the Gemara explains what the pasuk means. Chikha amma is a yisoid. The chikha amma that we're saying has a 5 tefach amma. That's excluded from the beginning of the pasuk. It said it's measured in 6 tefach ammas. In standard amas, it's in amas beinis. So the first exception to the amma beinis and mizbech is the yisoid. Amma roichev zeh, and the second exception that is also 5 tefach amma, a standard amma, is the soivev, the catwalk in the middle of the mizbech, not towards the middle. Ugvul al svasa sovev zeres ha'echad elu kronos. That's talking about the kronos. That the kronos, by measuring from the middle of the keren to its border, was a half of an amma. A zeres is a half an amma, and that was also the ammas of 5 tvachim. Very hard to know why the pasuk said it in this way. I don't think the Gemara explains it, but it's another way of saying that the keren was also a 5 tefach amma instead of a 6 tefach amma, instead of a amma beinis. And then finally, the last thing that we said, Zeg gav mizbeach, Zeh mizbeach hazav. That's a reference to the mizbeach hazav. There was also the entire mizbeach hazav was measured in 5 tefach amas. So this is the source of the machlokes. So what we came out before in the machlokes in Remeir and Yehuda was about whether all of the kalim, Yehuda says all of the kalim, including the shulchan, were 5 tefach amas, and Remeir said no, only the mizbeach hazav amongst the kalim was a 5 tefach amma, the rest was 6 tefach amas, and therefore the shulchan was 12 by 6. Remeir Sava Zel ba'amas bas chamisha. This, the Torah says, the zeh gav hamizbeach. So it's saying only this, that's zel ba'amas bas chamisha. Only mizbeach hazav is bas chamisha. Kol amas kelim ba'ama bas shesh. It's coming saying zeh gav hamizbeach, meaning only this one is 5 and everything else is 6. You decide kazeyu kol amas kelim. He says, no, you learn out from the Mizbeach Hazav to all other Kalim that they're also 6 tefach amas. Okay. So that is really the end of the part that's relevant to us. But now we're going to get off on a long tangent calculating when we said that the Saivim and the Yisoid and the Karen were each 1 tefach of 5 tefachim, 1 amma of 5 tefachim, whether we were referring to the width or the height of those features. Miyasoid at Soivev, from the Yisoid until the Soivev, ba'ama bas hey, begoiva. And you might think that when we were saying that we're now reinterpreting, one might think to understand the pasuk a little bit differently. Rather than saying that the Soivev and the Yisoid were each 5 tefach amas. What I meant to say is the area between them, in height, was measured in 5 tefach amas. Umay chika ama va'amaroichuv. What does it mean when it talks about the chika ama, which we said was the yisoid, va'amaroichuv, which was the yisoiv? Hachika ama. Mechika ama, mechika ama, va'adroicha ba'ama bas chamisha goyva. From the yisoid to the yisoiv, in those amas of the 10 amas of the mizbeach were measured in 5 tefach amas. Hamizbeach. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Hello, I'm in the middle of my share now. I'll talk to you afterwards. Okay. Hamizbeach kamahavi. How much was the total height of Mizbeach? Was Eser amos. That says in the pasuk in Chumash. Shis b'nei chamisha. 6 of them were of 5 tefach. The 6 that we just mentioned, the height from the yisoid, from the ground, including the yisoid, to the soiviv was 6 tefachim, and from the top of the yisoid was from that ledge till the top, really till the top of the mizbeach was 3, plus the other amma of the keren was 4. So you have 6 from the soiviv and down, and 4 from the soiviv and up. So the top 4 were like we said, the general rule of a mizbeach achitzon was that it was 6 tefach amas, the amma beinis. So therefore, and the bottom 6, the 4 on top were 6 tefach amas. The bottom 6 were 5 tefach amas. So shis b'nei chamisha, the bottom 6 were each 6 tefach amas. Our boy and the top 4 b'nei shisha, they were 6 tefach amas. So mizbeach kamahavi. So what was the total amount of tefachim in the height of mizbeach? Chamisha ba'arba. It was 54. 6 times 5 is 30, and 4 times 6 is 24. Halga the mizbeach kavahami. What was the halfway point of the mizbeach? Now, in our minds, like you think about it, you think the soiviv is the halfway point, but it's not correct. As we're going to see from a brisa later on, it might be a mishnah or a brisa, that the zrikas hadam, which was done over the halfway point, could be done somewhat below the soiviv. So that was it depended on the actual halfway point of the mizbeach, not where the soiviv was. Excuse me. So Pagan was Kamahavi Esrim V'Sheva. We just said the height of the Zech was 54, so half is 27. Mikronos V'Ad Soiviv Kavahami Esrim V'Yara. From the top till the Soiviv, like we said before, was 24. It was 4 tefachim times 6. So that's 24 tefachim. Kamen Botzel Lepalga the Mizbech. How much below it was the halfway point of the Mizbech? Tlosa, it was 3. 3 tefachim, right? 27. 27 minus 24 is 3. The halfway point was 27 from the top and 27 from the bottom. Utnan chutzol shikra chayger be'emsa. There was a red line that was belted the mizbeach right in the middle. To let you know where the dam that went on the mile and the dam that went lamata, where they went. When we discussed the procedure of bringing the oilas ha'if, which was one of the karbanos, the chatas habehema and the oilas ha'if were both done lamayla. Haya oila bekeves, the kind would go up onto the ramp, upon the l'sayviv, would go onto this sayviv. Ubala the karen draimus, he would reach the karen draimus mizrachis. Umoilik esraisha, there he would be moilik, the head of the animal, of the bird, mimul arpa, from its neck. Mavdal, he would be mavdal the simonim. Moit says dam al ker mizbech. Then he would smear the dam on the side of the mizbech. And the brisa continues, he could go up to an amma beneath the side, beneath his feet. If he was standing on the Saiviv, he had an extra amma underneath to shmir it. Now that really makes sense. If it was all the same size amas, it would make a lot of sense, right? The Saiviv was 4 amas from the top and 6 amas from the bottom. So you should theoretically have a full amma underneath to smear the blood. But what we're saying now that there were different, we use different tfachim for the different amas. Hakayav el yoina lamata mishnei tfachim. When you, if you, even if you say that when it says that he could do up to an amma beneath his feet, that's at least 5 tfachim beneath his feet. And we said that the chut hasikra was only 3 tfachim. The 27 amas from the top and the bottom was only 3 tfachim beneath the seivav, because we were using smaller tfachim on the bottom and larger tfachim on the top. So the Gemara says, so we're gonna have to maybe understand this pasuk differently. Elachika amma, maybe when we talk about that the yisoid was an amma, knisa amma, doesn't mean the height of the yisoid, but rather it means its width, how much it goes in, right? The yisoid is the outer edge of the mizbeach, and it went in by 5 tefachim, an amma of 5 tefachim. But einachanami, the height of the tefach, the height of the amma of the yisoid was 6. Roichev knisa. And when we talk about the roichev, that's also talking about the knisa, how much the soiviv goes in. I'm sorry. Yeah. Gvula al svasa saviv, and also when we talk about the keren, knisa. But and the width of the keren was also a tefach, a 5. These are the things that had the 5 tefach amma instead of the 6 tefach amma, and all the amas on the as far vertically were all 6 tefach amas, which, like we said, works out perfectly. Then you have 4 amas on top of the saiviv, 6 underneath, and the 1 amma underneath. The saiviv was part of the top half.
So in other words, the height were all 6 tvachim, but the width is what we are distinguishing.
Right. But this is going to open a whole different can of worms by changing the width. Mizbeach kama havale shisin Mizbeach kama havale shisin. So first we're going to go through the calculation of the height. The entire height of the Mizbeach was 60 tvachim according to this, 6 tefach amas. And the halfway point was 30. It was 24 down to the seiviv. Then it was from the bottom of the seiviv to the halfway point was 6 tefachim. So that would work out. The vertical part works out. But b'mayu kimta b'knisa. But now it's saying that rather than reducing the heights of the yisoid, saiviv, and keren, we're reducing their width. Utnan im asal amat. I'm sorry. Can you really say that the widths were reduced? Vatnan. The Mizbeach was 32 by 32. And as they're going to prove, the Gemara is going to prove later, that 32 by 32 was definitely all 6 tefach amas, because we have a measurement of all of the entire width of the Beis Hamikdash, and the Mizbeach is calculated it. Allah amma, it went up 1 amma, the kanas amma, and then it went in 1 amma. So this is still the Mishnah describing the Mizbeach, right? So the Yisoid went up 1 amma, went in 1 amma. Zeo Yisoid. Nimtza shloishim al shloishim. And the Mishnah says, therefore, since it went up 1 amma on each side of the Mizbeach, so the 32 after the Yisoid was reduced to 30. Fact the Gemara, shloishim ushnei tvachim hava. Since the amma of the Yisoid was only a 5 tefach amma, so the 30 amas that are left really have 30 amas plus an additional, if the entire width of the Mizbech was 32, but you only reduced it by the side by 5 tvachim, so the rest of the Mizbech that was left was 32 plus 2 tvachim. The extra tefach from each of the between 5 tvachim and 6 tvachim of the Yisod. Visu. And then the Mishnah continues another question, which is a very similar question. Allah Chamish, you go 5 off from the Yisod. The Yisod itself was an Amma. Then 5 Amas on top of that. The Kanas Amma, then you go inside, it goes, the Mizbeach goes in by another Amma. Zeu Saivav. Nimsa Esrim Shmaina al Esrim Ushmaina. And once you get past this Saivav, then it's 28 by 28. At this point, you've lost 4 tefachim because it was another. We said the side was also only 5 tefachim in width. Maybe you'll say, okay, it's true. You're right. It's a little off, but it's still less than an amma. So the pasuk, the Mishnah, does not bother itself to describe a discrepancy of less than an amma. But it continues, Makom Karnas Amma, Mizeh v'Amma Mizeh. The Karnas themselves were each an Amma on each corner. Nimtza Esen v'Sheish al Esen v'Sheish. The area inside of the Karnas was 26 by 26. Again, we lost another 2 Ammas of indentation. V'Sheish Esen v'Sheb, Esen al Sheish al Esen v'Sheish, Esen v'Sheba have it. But this would already be 27. You'd have a full extra amma. At this point, you added on 2 tvachim for the saiviv, and two tvachim for the yisaid, and 2 tvachim for the keren. That's a total of 6 tvachim, which is a full amma. So you wanted to say it's because we weren't being careful about anything less than an amma. This is a full amma difference. So Gemara, loidak. Even that they will not doubt. That means the Mishnah was not counting up the discrepancies. It wanted to say each one as it was. It didn't want to get involved in the fuller picture. It's very hard to understand what that means. Loidak. It's hard to understand why it wouldn't say it would say 26 when it was really 27. That's what it means. Loidak. We're really trying to describe how wide each indentation was. But the Gemara has another question. Makom hiluch raglei hakanim amma mizeh v'am mizeh. Inside of the Keren, there was a pathway that the Gehanim would walk that they didn't put the Maracha, the pile of where they burnt the karbonos on. So there was that path around that. Nimsa esem v'arba al esem v'arba. Makom hamaracha. So by reducing 26 by a amma all the way around, so you're left with a 24 by 24 space for where the fire for the Mizbeach was. That was not 24, it was 25. And if you'll try to say, just like we said before, that we were not medayik, so that can't be, because the pasuk says directly that it was 24. The Ariel, which is the makom of the maracha, the fire on the Mizbech, was 12 by 12. Ravua, in a square. Maybe taka, it's only 12 amas by 12 amas. When it says on its 4 corners, it's saying there was 12 amas in each direction, meaning 24 by 24. So how could you say that it was really 25 if the pasuk says it was 24? It's one thing to say the Mishnah was loidak and it didn't calculate, but the pasuk has to be accurate. It wouldn't say 24 when it was actually 25. Okay. So v'chitema, and if you'll say, okay, maybe just like we were saying that in the height, we're saying some of the amas were of different sizes than others. Maybe also in the calculation of Mizbeach. How do we know that the Mizbeach was 32 by 32 or 32 amas wide, all of 6 tefach amas? Maybe some were 5 tefach amas. And that's how, then you'll be left with taka 24 amas in the middle. Because the width, we never described the Mizbeach as being a full 32, 6 by of 6 tefach amas. And if you'll say 6 of them were from the beginning, the entire mizbech included 6 tefachim, which is from the Yesod and the Keren and the Soiviv, that they were all of 5 tefachim. Imkain Rav Chala Azara. Then you'll have a problem for the measurements of the mizbech in the Azara. That's not. Chala Azara Haisa Oirach Meyu Shmainim V'Sheva. The length of the entire Azara, which included the Beis Hamikdash, which included the Ulam and the Heichel and the Kachei Kachim inside of it, was 187. Al Roicha Meyu Shloshim V'Chamesh, by 135. Mimizrach L'Mayrav. Mimizrach L'Mayrav Meyu Shmainim V'Sheva. From the entire length of the Azara was 187. Makom Drishus Ragli Yisrael Achas Esrei. So deduct from that the first 11 amas. That was where the Yidden were allowed to come, even if they were not doing an avodah. So 187 minus 11 is 176. Achas Esrei. Umakam Drishus Ragli Kahanim Achas Esrei. Another 11 was the part where the Kehanim, that was called the place of the Kehanims, where they were allowed to walk, even if they were not doing avodah. That's down from 176 to 165. Hamizbeach shloshim v'shtayim. The mizbeach was 32, so that gets down to 133. Bein ulam mizbeach eser mushtayim. Between the ulam and the mizbeach was 22, so that gets us to 111. Ha'hechel meya ama. The Heichel itself was 100 amas. Between the Heichel and the Kachei Kachim, and Asara Achas Asrei Ama Acharei Beis HaKaparos. That left 11 amas. We went from 111, we deducted 100. So we have 11 amas behind the Kaparos, meaning behind the Kachei Kachim, between that and the end of the Azar. So it all added up to 187. But if you're going to take away and say 6 of the amas in the mizbech were the 5 tefach amas, so then you'd have an amma less by the mizbech. Instead of the mizbech being a total of 32, we're not starting to say that part of the cheshbon of these amas were also 5 tefach amas, because we're talking about everything else was 6 tefach amas. But if the mizbech really was only 31 amas of 6 tefach amas, that would throw off this calculation. So we're saying another pshat in how we calculated what that pasuk in Yechezkel. El chika ama begoiva. The chika ama, meaning by the Yesod, we're talking about a height of 1 ama. That is 5 tefachim ama. Ama roichev knisa, and the ama of the roichev, meaning the ama of the soiviv, that was Taka talking about in the width. Gvula al svasa saviv, and then it's talking about, when it talks about the Keren, that's talking also about the legabe, the height. Rashi says, the saviv, the gavaya, the Keren, va'ama bashe, that was also 5. So when we're saying the exceptions of what is 5 tefach amas, it's talking about the height of the Keren and the Yesod, but the Gaiva was talking about the width. So the Gemara is later on going to say, from the fact that the pasuk described them differently, that indicates us that the Yesod and the Saiviv were talking about different dimensions. One was talking about the width, and one was talking about the height. And loish nahachi. And we don't really care. It's not going to make a difference how wide the kronos were, because in any case, it's not going to amount to a tefach, and therefore we were able to disregard it when we were talking about whether it's 5 or 6. It's still going to be that the discrepancy as far as the width, when we're calculating the entire size of the Mishkan, it's going to be less than an amma, so therefore we ignored it. So, Mizbeach Hakama Havi, Chamishin v'tamne. So now we're going to go through our calculation. The height of the Mizbeach was 58, right? Because we just deducted, rather than deducting, like we said before, 3 tvachim, we only deducted 2 tvachim from the height. Pag the Mizbeach kama havi eser v'tesha, so it was 29. Because that's kama havi from the Kronos, which we said that the Keren was 1 tefach smaller, eser nutlas. So it was 23, right? Because it will be 4 times 6 minus the 1 missing from the Keren. Kama batzel lepag the Mizbeach shisa. So you still have, when you between 23 to 25, I'm sorry, it was 28, 29.
29.
29.
29 minus
So 23
23.
to 29 is 6. So we still have a full amma underneath the saiviv that you could put the dam and still be on the top half. Dekanami, like we said before, and this is also meduyak, that not all these measurements were going in the saiviv and the yisai were not talking about the same dimension. The chsiv chika ama v'ama roichev. They were described in different ways. One was called the chika ama, and one was called the ama roichev. Why were they described differently? Because one was talking about the height, the saiviv was talking about the height of the saiviv. I'm sorry, the width of the saiviv, and the yisai was talking about the height of the yisai. Shema mina. Okay, I guess the rest. I guess then it's a new thing. I'm not gonna make you go through this now. And also, I assume people have to get to davening.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you so much.
Have a good
Thank you
day. I
so
hope
much
it was
for
made sense.